He took my car without asking, crashed it, and then told me it was my fault for not getting the brakes checked sooner. I stood in the kitchen that morning, the smell of burnt toast lingering because I'd forgotten the bread in the toaster again. Happens when you're 78 and your mind's cluttered. I was buttering the second slice when the phone rang. Not his voice, no, a stranger's. "Ma'am, do you own a beige Buick LaCrosse? License plate ending in 512? My heart dropped. "Yes. Is everything all right? Your vehicle's been in an accident near Oak Ridge and 5th. No serious injuries, but there's significant damage. The driver, Trevor Jensen, said he's your son?" I nodded, though he couldn't see. "Yes," I whispered. "That's my son." By the time I got to the intersection, the tow truck was already lifting my car off the curb. Trevor stood nearby, arms crossed, expression blank. No limp, no blood, just irritated. "Ma," he said before I could speak, "your brakes are a joke." I blinked. "Excuse me?" He waved toward the Buick. "You knew they were squeaky. I've told you before. You should have had them checked. You took the car without asking." He shrugged. "I needed it. Mine's in the shop. What was I supposed to do? Miss work?" I looked at the Buick. The whole front was crumpled, the hood like a crushed soda can. My hands trembled. "You didn't even call me." "I didn't want you to worry," he said, tone flat. "It's not like you drive much anyway." The police officer approached then, asking for insurance. Trevor handed over my documents like they were his. Didn't even glance at me. When the officer turned away, he muttered, "Hope your premiums aren't insane." That was the end of it. "No, sorry, Ma. No, are you okay?" Just a headache of forms and the knowledge that the car I'd driven to church and the grocery store for 10 years was now twisted metal. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table in silence. The buttered toast sat cold on the plate. My tea had gone bitter. I watched the sun crawl along the linoleum floor, feeling like a guest in my own house. I waited. I waited for a text, a call, even a knock on the door. Nothing. That evening, I called him. I don't even know what for. "Trevor, Ma," he cut me off. "I'm exhausted. Can we not do this now? But, look, it's done. I'll help you sort it out when I have time, all right?" Click. I stared at the phone in my hand, then set it down gently, as if noise might make this moment worse. He never asked how I was. Not once. That night I couldn't sleep. The house creaked like it always did, but louder now, as if mocking me. The hallway light flickered again. I hadn't had it fixed because Trevor said he'd get to it. 6 months ago. I pulled the quilt higher over my chest and stared at the ceiling. Was this what it had all been for? The double shifts at the diner after his father passed. The savings I'd drained so he could buy his first clunker. The groceries I kept stocked when he was between jobs. The cash I slipped him every Christmas, even when he said, "You don't have to, Ma." All those years. And now, when all I had was a Buick and a quiet house, even the car was taken without so much as a thank you or a glance back. I told myself I was overreacting, that he was just stressed. But something inside me knew better. Something had broken. Not just the Buick's front bumper, but something deeper. Older. Me. The mechanic said it wasn't worth fixing. "Your frame's bent, ma'am. Once that happens, it's never the same. Even if I patch it, it won't drive right." I stood there, nodding like I understood the language of torque and alignment, when really, I was just calculating the quiet truth. My car was gone. The last thing I bought for myself with pride. Paid in full, no help from anyone. Trevor didn't come with me. He said he was buried at work, though when I called his office, the line rang unanswered. I left a message. He never called back. I paid the tow company, the storage fee, and the disposal charge from my savings. A dent in my modest cushion. Not a fatal one, but it stung. Back home, I made tea and sat in the sunroom with the cup in both hands. The light fell across the carpet where Trevor had spilled grape juice at 4, and I'd scrubbed until my knuckles bled. That stain never fully came out. Lorraine called in the afternoon. My neighbor for 20 years, a retired schoolteacher with a sharp tongue and a sharp heart. Heard about the crash, she said. Saw the tow truck. I explained in short sentences. Left out the part about the accusation, the absence of apology. But she knew me too well. And he didn't even say sorry? I hesitated. No. Mayor, she said, her voice hardening, you've got to stop cleaning up after that boy. He's not a boy. He's 46. And still acting like he's 16. You taught that child better. I thought I did. She paused. You know what this is, don't you? Guilt. You've carried it so long, you think it's yours to live with. I didn't respond. Just traced the rim of my teacup. Let me guess, she added. You paid for the repairs? There were no repairs. But the bills? I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. You need to write it all down, she said, gentler now. Every dime, every time. Make it real. We hung up not long after. I stared out at the rose bushes I hadn't trimmed since spring and thought about what Lorraine said. Write it all down. I'd never made lists about Trevor. Never wanted to see it that way. But maybe it was time. That evening, I pulled the old ledger from the drawer in the hallway desk. The same one I'd used to track grocery budgets when Trevor was little and we were living off pancakes and bulk oatmeal. The first entry I found dated back to 2004. Loan, $1 to $800, used car deposit. I wrote loan back then. I thought he'd pay me back. He never did. Next came the co-signed lease for the apartment he broke early, the dental work, the business startup that didn't start anything, the wedding deposit, though the wedding never happened. Refunds weren't issued. A decade later, it was still going. New tires, new laptop, late rent, just until Friday. Don't tell my ex. Mom, I'm really stuck this time. I flipped page after page, each one full of handwriting that got smaller and more resigned. I closed the ledger. The quiet of the house pressed down on me. Even the fridge hum felt louder than usual. And then came a knock. Not the door, the window, the back one near the kitchen. I startled and turned. Trevor. He waved through the glass like it was just any other Thursday night. I opened the door, stepping aside. You know the front works, too. He smiled that lopsided grin that used to melt me. Didn't want to bother you. Bit late for that. He looked around, hands in his jacket pockets. You okay? I raised my eyebrows. 3 days later? I've been busy. I said nothing. Listen, he started. I'm sorry about the car, that it got messed up. That it got messed up, I repeated. Well, you know what I mean. I didn't answer. I just watched him fidget. I talked to a guy at work, he continued. Says I can maybe get you a used sedan, decent condition. If I can swing it, I'll let you know. Swing it? Money's tight right now. I exhaled. It always is. His expression hardened. Ma, I'm doing my best. Are you? We stood in the kitchen, two people sharing the same blood, but not the same truth. I have to go, he muttered, stepping back toward the door. Just wanted to check in. As he turned, I asked, Trevor, if I hadn't paid the bill, would you have? He froze. What? The tow, the lot, the fines. If I hadn't paid them, would you? He didn't turn around, just opened the door. I watched him walk down the steps, not looking back. When Trevor was 8, he broke the neighbor's window with a baseball. He came running home in tears, clutching the bat, convinced he'd go to jail. I held him on my lap, kissed his forehead, and told him we'd fix it. I walked him next door, made him apologize, and paid for the glass with grocery money. That was the first time I covered for him. I used to think it was love. Now I'm not so sure. After he left that night, I didn't sleep much. I lay in bed with the covers up to my chin, watching the light change through the curtains. When dawn came, I boiled water for tea and sat at the kitchen table with the old ledger in front of me again. There were too many entries to count. Some small, $40 here, $1 to $20 there. Others larger, $2,500 when he totaled his first car and claimed the insurance got lost in the system. $6,000 for a down payment on a dream job opportunity in Tampa that vanished in 3 months. What's worse is that I remember the tone of every ask. Not gratitude, expectation. Like I was a pocket he could unzip anytime he needed. And I'd let him. Back then, I believed it was my job. After his father died, I promised myself Trevor wouldn't feel the lack. Not of food, not of affection, not of protection, but somewhere in trying to make up for a missing parent, I erased myself. I remembered a night, he must have been 22, when I caught him sneaking into the garage to borrow my old Honda. No license, no insurance. He was furious that I said no. Called me paranoid. That was the first time he raised his voice, but he cooled off the next day. Hugged me in the kitchen, joked about Ma the enforcer. I laughed then, laughed and let it go. That became the rhythm, a storm, then a calm, an ask, then a check, anger, then apology. And me, always smoothing the surface like a woman ironing someone else's shirt. I'd forgotten how much of my life had been spent cleaning up after him. I pulled open the bottom drawer of the desk. Inside was the tin box I kept the deed to the house, the will I updated after Harold died, and every bank statement for the last 10 years. I started highlighting every withdrawal marked with a T. I stopped after 17 pages. By noon, I was shaking. Not from rage, not from sadness, but from a kind of reckoning, a tiredness that sits in the bones. I put the papers down and stared out the window. Across the street, the Millers' teenage son was mowing their lawn. Earbuds in, shirt off, sweat on his back. He waved when he saw me watching. I waved back. He used to mow mine before Trevor insisted he'd take care of it to save money. He never did. The grass grew long. The neighbors stopped asking. I paid a service eventually, quietly. That afternoon, I opened the glove compartment of the Buick, now empty in the mechanic's lot. I still had the second set of keys. Inside was the rosary I kept on the mirror and a photo of Trevor at 15, braces still on, grinning beside a science fair project. He used to be a sweet boy. Used to. The doorbell rang around 5. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened it to find Clara, my youngest granddaughter, on the steps with a grocery bag. Mom said you'd been down, she said, walking in before I could answer. Thought you might need some comfort carbs. She pulled out bagels, cream cheese, and a frozen lasagna. I hadn't seen her in 3 months. You didn't have to. Shush, she said. It was an excuse to get away. They've been arguing nonstop. About what? She made a face. Money, mostly. Dad's been off. asking Mom for her jewelry receipts, talking about investments, like he's chasing something. My stomach turned. Clara, has he asked you for money? She blinked. No, but he joked about it. Said I should let him manage my student loans if I trusted him. I felt my pulse rise. And do you? I laughed and changed the subject. I wanted to ask more, but I didn't want to turn her visit into an interrogation. Instead, we sat in the living room and ate bagels. I always liked this room, Clara said, curling her legs under her. It feels real here, not like at home. Too many glass tables? She laughed. Too many glass expectations. That night, after she left, I opened the ledger again and wrote something new on the last page. May 3rd, Buick totaled. Trevor blamed me. Paid $1,345. Silence. Free. And under that, in smaller script. No more. Clara wasn't even out of the driveway when the doorbell rang again. I figured she'd forgotten something. Her scarf, maybe, or the lasagna. But when I opened the door, it wasn't her. It was Luke, my eldest grandson. He looked awkward, shifting from foot to foot, hands in his hoodie pocket like a teenager, though he was nearly 30. Hey, Grandma, he said, eyes not quite meeting mine. Luke, I replied, a little surprised. Everything all right? Yeah, I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd stop by. That was a lie. He lived across town, and he didn't just stop by. Still, I stepped aside. He followed me into the living room and sat where Clara had been minutes before. His eyes darted to the table, the empty bagel plate, the untouched tea. Clara was just here, I said. Yeah, he mumbled. I saw her leave. I waited. He didn't say anything for a while. Then, Dad's been acting weird lately. I sat down. That seems to be the theme this week. Luke cracked his knuckles, an old habit. He asked me to co-sign something, a loan. I didn't breathe. What kind of loan? He said it was short-term, just a bridge loan, business stuff. Promised it'd be covered within 60 days. Did you? He looked ashamed. Not yet. I told him I needed to think about it. And your mother? He hasn't told her. Said she worries too much. I nodded slowly, each bone in my neck feeling older than it had yesterday. Did he mention your car? Luke asked suddenly. I blinked. Yes. He hesitated. He told us you'd offered it, that you weren't using it, and told him to take it. I laughed. Not a joyful sound, just air and disbelief. Offered it? Luke looked sheepish. I figured it wasn't true. It wasn't. He nodded. Clara doesn't believe him either. I reached for my tea but didn't drink it. Why are you really here, Luke? He swallowed hard. I think he's in trouble, Grandma. I met his eyes. I think he always was. Luke looked down. I didn't come to defend him. I just wanted to know how you're doing. There it was, the quiet kindness that ran in our family from me, not from Trevor. I'm all right, I said. Thank you for asking. He stood up, hesitated, then leaned down and kissed the top of my head. As he left, he turned and said, If he tries anything, let me know, okay? I nodded. The house was quiet again. The kind of quiet that hums under your skin. I took the ledger from the drawer and flipped to the back. May 4th. Luke visits. Trevor tried to rewrite the story. Clara brought bagels. Truth is surfacing. I closed it and set it aside. Then I got up, went to the filing cabinet, and pulled out every document with Trevor's name on it. Phone bills in my name but his number. Utility statements for his old apartment. A loan I'd taken out in my name years ago for something he never finished. I stacked them neatly. I was beginning to see the pattern for what it was. Not motherly support, but survival by manipulation. And I'd been complicit. That night, Clara texted, "He asked me about your savings." No greeting. Just those words. I stared at the screen, the small white letters glowing in my hand. "What did you say?" I typed back. A moment passed. I lied. Said you moved everything into something private. He didn't like that. I stared at that message a long time. Then I turned off my phone, went to the kitchen, and poured the cold tea down the sink. It took me 3 full hours to go through the folder I labeled Trevor, Financials. I had started it years ago, not for protection, but for memory. I'd tell myself, just in case I need to remember dates. The truth was harder. I needed to track how many times I was being used. The folder was thick. Too thick for a mother who had no responsibilities after her son turned 30. I laid each paper out across the dining room table like pieces of a broken machine. Together, they spelled out a history I had refused to read. Check number 2283, $3,200, deposit for apartment, he broke lease in 11 months. Credit card statement, March 2014, emergency dental for Trevor, 120. Bank transfer, $9,500, business idea, never explained. I stopped halfway through the pile and made a cup of tea I didn't want, just to get my hands to stop shaking. By the time I sat back down, the sun had shifted through the window, and the stack of papers was now half-shadowed, like some metaphor I was too tired to admire. I found one receipt that made me laugh, bitterly. April 2017. Urgent car repairs, $740. That was for a different car, a different excuse, a different sorry ma that never came. When the spreadsheet was done, the total was over $83,000, not including the Buick, not including the groceries, the birthday gifts turned lifelines, or the unpaid loans to friends that somehow always led back to Trevor. I sat there staring at that number, not because it was huge, because it was mine. Money I'd earned wiping tables, folding laundry, clipping coupons, and buying my own dresses secondhand so he could have new shoes. It wasn't just the money, it was the story behind it. The fact that I kept giving it because I thought that's what love was. That if I just held out long enough, poured in enough, he'd return the gesture. Remember me. See me. I reached for the last envelope in the stack. A thick manila one with Trevor Private scrawled across it in my own handwriting. I didn't remember writing that. Or maybe I had blocked it out. Inside, his birth certificate, copies of his old school records, and a photo of him at age 10 holding a trophy. I'd kept it all in case he ever needed a backup for job applications or housing. He never asked. On the back of the photo, in faded ink, I'd written, "My boy, always trying so hard. I'll be here if you fall." I stared at those words like they were a stranger's. I didn't cry. I just set it down and let the silence sit with me. It wasn't rage I felt. Not yet. It was something colder, like someone waking up from a dream and realizing the fire's long gone out. That evening, I sat on the porch with a blanket and watched the neighborhood settle into its night. Lights blinking on behind curtains. A dog barking 3 houses down. Somewhere, someone was grilling. I used to imagine growing old with Trevor nearby. Grandkids visiting, dinners where we'd laugh over old stories. But he didn't come by unless he needed something. His kids did sometimes. Clara brought warmth. Luke brought truth. But Trevor? He brought absence, wrapped in a smile. The porch light buzzed softly. I hadn't replaced the bulb in years. It was the original Harold had installed. And suddenly, I thought, Why have I kept it like this? Old fixtures, old hope. I stood up, went inside, and took the folder labeled Will and Assets out of the cabinet. It was time to make space. The first call came at 9:42 a.m., a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring, then it rang again, same number. Third time, I answered. Mrs. Jensen? The voice was polite. Male. This is Daniel from First Elm Savings Bank. I'm calling to confirm a recent request to reset your online access and add a secondary authorized user to your checking account. I blinked. I didn't make any such request. A pause. Paper shuffling. You didn't authorize Mr. Trevor Jensen to be added? No, I most certainly did not. Another pause. Then Daniel's voice became very careful. In that case, we'll freeze pending changes and flag the account. Do you have a moment to review recent activity? Yes. I have a very long moment. What followed was 10 minutes of dates, amounts, and transactions I hadn't made. Trevor had somehow gained access to my login, likely an old password I never changed, and had been testing the waters. Nothing massive yet, but enough to rattle me. A $150 Amazon charge, a pending Zelle transfer labeled consulting fee, an attempt to initiate a $4,000 cashier's check, blocked, thankfully, by bank policy. Can you tell me exactly when these started? I asked. Daniel cleared his throat. The first suspicious login was about 6 days ago. 6 days ago was the day he wrecked my Buick. So, that was the plan all along. I ended the call with the bank after triple confirming security blocks and requesting new login credentials via physical mail. Then I called Lorraine. You were right, I said. I usually am, she replied dryly. Which part this time? He tried to take money from my account after crashing the car. I expected her to curse, but instead she was quiet. I'm sorry, Mary, she said. That's not just disrespect. That's theft. I'm calling the lawyer, I said, and the bank again. I want him off everything, every document, every access, every account. Good. I should have done it years ago. You're doing it now. That counts. It did. I made an appointment with Mr. Harlan, our family lawyer for over 30 years. He'd seen me through Harold's estate, the house deed transfer, and all those careful years of living small and saving big. His receptionist remembered me, offered tea, called me Mrs. Jensen, with that old-fashioned courtesy that made me feel like someone. Mr. Harlan looked tired, older than last I'd seen him, but when I explained the situation, his eyes sharpened. He tried to add himself to your account? He asked. Yes. Do you have him listed anywhere as a power of attorney? No. He nodded. We'll draft an affidavit to formalize that, just to cover any bank confusion. Do you have a will on file with us? I do. Is he listed as a beneficiary? I hesitated. He was. Not anymore. Mr. Harlan didn't flinch, just opened a folder and made notes. We discussed revocation forms, secure accounts, and setting up a trust, protected, legal, sealed from interference. I had Clara in mind. An hour later, I stepped out of that office feeling steadier than I had in years. I'd spent a lifetime believing my value was in what I gave. Now, I was learning that protecting what's mine wasn't selfish. It was survival. Back home, I boiled water for tea. My phone buzzed. Trevor. I didn't answer. A minute later, a message appeared. Ma, we need to talk. Urgent. Call me. Another followed. Please. I stared at the screen but didn't touch it. I'd heard please before, usually right before he took something. I used to believe silence was love. When Trevor stopped calling for weeks at a time, I'd tell myself he was busy. When he forgot birthdays, anniversaries, Even the day his father passed, I'd say, he's got a lot on his plate. When he snapped, I'd answer kindly. When he disappeared, I waited. I thought that was what mothers did. That's what kept me from changing the locks, from changing the will, from changing anything. Until now. I spent the morning shredding every document with his name as a cosigner. Old bills, outdated authorizations, even that silly shared Erole membership he never once paid for. It was oddly satisfying, the sound of paper being chewed to bits. By noon, I had a full trash bag and an empty desk drawer. I made a simple sandwich, egg and mustard, and sat on the back steps with my tea. The sun had finally broken through the clouds. The breeze smelled like rain, not yet fallen. I watched a sparrow hop along the fence. It was the first peaceful breath I'd taken in weeks. Then I heard it. The slam of a car door. I turned my head slowly. Trevor stood on the sidewalk, one hand in his jacket, the other holding his phone like a shield. I didn't move. He started walking toward the porch. "Ma," he called, putting on the same strained smile he used at funerals and tax appointments. "Can we talk?" "Talk?" I repeated, not standing. "About what?" He stopped at the bottom step, hesitating like a boy caught cheating on a test. "I heard you've been making some changes." "That's right. Look, I know you're upset about the car, but that's not—" I cut him off. "Not the car, Trevor. The lies, the passwords, the bank. You tried to steal from me." His face darkened. "I didn't steal anything. You tried." He shifted. "It was a mistake. I thought you were okay with it. You thought I was okay with you taking money out of my account without permission?" "It was just temporary," he said quickly. "I was going to put it back." I stood now, not because I was angry, but because I wanted to look him in the eye. "I've been putting it back for 40 years, Trevor. Every loan, every favor, every lie. I've paid for all of them, but not anymore." He blinked, stunned. "So what? You're cutting me off? Your own son?" "I'm reclaiming my life." He took a step forward, voice rising. "You can't just abandon me." "After everything I've done for you?" The laugh escaped before I could stop it. "Everything you've done for me? Name one thing, Trevor. One." His mouth opened, closed. He looked down. That was all the answer I needed. "I know about the loans," I said quietly. "The accounts. I've seen every transaction. I've spoken to the bank, the lawyer. You're out. Completely." He looked up sharply. "You're doing this because of Clara and Luke?" "No," I said. "I'm doing this because of me." He stared at me like he didn't recognize the person in front of him. Maybe he didn't. Maybe for the first time, he was seeing me not as a soft shoulder or an open wallet, but as a woman who had finally drawn a line. "Ma," he said, his voice suddenly small. "I'm in a bad spot." I nodded. "I know. I need help. I did. For years." He swallowed. "Please. Just one more time. I swear I'll make it right." I looked at him. My son, my sorrow, my lesson. "No." He opened his mouth again, but I was already walking back inside. The office was cold, but the woman across from me had warm eyes. Her name was Janice, estate lawyer. Clara had recommended her. "You're making the right move," she said, flipping through the documents I'd brought in a zippered folder I hadn't opened in years. "Do you have a specific beneficiary in mind for the trust?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "My granddaughter, Clara Jinson." Janice nodded, made a note. "Any conditions?" "No," I said. "She's earned my trust. The others haven't." Her pen paused. She didn't press. Just let the quiet sit between us like a cup of cooling tea. We reviewed my will, piece by piece. I revoked Trevor's inclusion with a stroke of ink. Property rights, financial access, medical decisions, gone. He would be notified formally, she said. But I didn't care about that. Let the paper speak what I no longer had to. By the end of the meeting, the trust was underway. We set it up to activate immediately, funded with the remaining cash from my savings, my modest investments, and the equity in the house. Clara wouldn't touch a penny now unless something happened to me. But I knew she'd protect it. She wouldn't expect it. I remembered the time she refused money for textbooks, said, "I'll figure it out. You've done enough, Grandma." And then she did. She always did. Back home, I pulled the curtains open and sat by the window. It was raining now, a slow, steady kind. Not dramatic, just cleansing. That's how this felt. Not a storm. A rinse. At dusk, Clara came by. She brought cinnamon rolls. The good kind. The ones from that tiny bakery downtown where they wrap them in parchment like gifts. I didn't know what kind of day it was, she said, placing the bag on the table, but I figured carbs were always welcome. I smiled. It was a good day. She looked at me, eyebrows lifted. "Really?" "Yes," I said. "I did something I should have done a long time ago." I didn't tell her the details, not yet, but I placed a hand over hers, firm and warm. "Clara," I said softly, "I want you to know that everything I've been holding on to, financially, emotionally, is no longer tied to people who don't value it." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said, "I'm tired of spending my life begging for kindness, and I'm done leaving my future in the hands of people who treat me like a burden." She was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and hugged me across the table. Not out of obligation, out of understanding. "Do you want to come stay with me for a few days?" she asked. "Change of scene?" I smiled. "Not yet. I want to be in this house a little longer. I need to see it. Differently." "Differently how?" "Like it's mine again." She nodded. That night, after she left, I lit the old lamp in the hallway and walked through every room slowly. The faded rug, the chipped porcelain, the creaky cabinet that's needed oil since 2009. I loved all of it again, in a way I hadn't in years. Because none of it reminded me of Trevor. Not anymore. It reminded me of me. He came by again the next morning. Didn't call, didn't text, just knocked. When I opened the door, I knew before he spoke that something was different. Trevor was dressed too neatly, hair combed, shirt tucked in. He held a pastry box in one hand, like a salesman trying to get a foot in the door. "Morning, Ma," he said, as if it were any normal Tuesday. "Thought I'd bring you some of those lemon scones you like, from that place near the park." I said nothing, just stared. He shifted. "Can I come in?" "No," I answered. He blinked. "Just for a minute." "No, Trevor. Not even for one." The smile faltered. "Come on. I said I was sorry." "No, you didn't," I corrected him. "You said it was a misunderstanding. You said you thought I wouldn't mind. That's not an apology. That's you rewriting history." His jaw tightened. "I just want to talk," he said. "In person. Like adults." "I don't think you want that." "Ma," he said, trying that softened tone again. "I know things got tense, but I've been thinking. About us. About family. Maybe we got off track, but I want to make it right." I crossed my arms. "And how do you plan to do that?" He hesitated. "Well, I could help out around here more. I know I've been absent, but things are changing. I want to step up." I almost laughed. Step up? After 46 years? I didn't say it. Instead, I asked, Did you bring scones when you thought you still had access to my bank accounts? His eyes flashed, just for a second. I came to make peace. No, you came because the money dried up. Ma, he said again, exasperated. I'm trying here. You're not exactly making it easy. I made it easy for decades. That stopped him. We stood there, just like that, my hand on the door, his on a box of scones growing colder by the second. Finally, he said, You know, Clara and Luke aren't saints either. Don't let them poison you against me. They didn't have to, I said. You did that all by yourself. His face twisted. Not rage, not guilt. Something worse. Disbelief. Like he still couldn't believe the door wouldn't open for him. He placed the box gently on the porch rail, as if that would fix everything. Then he turned, walked down the steps, and got into his car. I watched him drive off, but I didn't feel shaken. I felt, finally, done. I left the scones where they were. By nightfall, the box was soaked from dew. By morning, the birds had found it. The phone rang 3 times that day, and I let every call go to voicemail. All from him. By evening, I gave in and listened. Ma, I know you're upset, but this is serious. I'm really in a bind right now. Things have gone sideways with the investors. I need a small bridge loan, just enough to hold until next month. Please. You know I always pay you back. He didn't. He never had. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from nerves, but from clarity. When you finally stop pretending someone will change, it empties something inside you, but it also clears the fog. I got up and went to the kitchen. Sat at the table with the light on low, the house quiet as a church after the congregation leaves. I looked at the small notepad I kept by the fridge, the one with shopping lists and reminder dates. I turned to a fresh page. At the top, I wrote, What I owe him, and below that, I wrote, Nothing. The next morning, the knock came earlier than usual. I opened the door just enough to see his face, drawn, desperate, pretending to smile. Ma, please, he said before I could speak. I know I've made mistakes, but I need your help. No, I said calmly. You don't even want to hear what it is. I know what it is. You're in debt. You're scared. And you're coming here because I've never said no before. He looked stunned, like a man who's walked through a familiar door only to find the room gone. You don't understand, he tried. They're threatening legal action. I could lose everything. I leaned on the doorframe. And when I lost my car, my savings, my time, what did I get? A thank you? An apology? Trevor, I raised you. I fed you. I worked night shifts so you could have shoes without holes. And when your father died, I held you while you cried and told you everything would be okay, even when I didn't believe it myself. He looked away. I need this, he whispered. I needed a son who would care, I replied. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Then, so that's it? You're just cutting me off? Leaving me in the dirt? No, Trevor, I said. You've been digging this ditch for years. I'm just done climbing in with you. He stood there a moment longer, then walked away. No storm, no screaming, just footsteps down the porch and the slow groan of a car door. I stood there long after he drove off. Not because I felt guilty. Because I didn't. The call came on a Thursday morning. Rain tapped lightly against the kitchen window. I was peeling an apple for breakfast when the phone rang. Sharp, insistent, official sounding. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and picked up. Mrs. Mary Jinson? The voice asked. Yes. This is Officer Helen Rosario from the County Sheriff's Department. I'm calling regarding your son, Trevor Jinson. I gripped the counter. What happened? He's been taken into custody pending investigation on charges of fraud and wire theft. He listed you as his emergency contact. I didn't speak. Are you aware of any financial dealings he's been involved in recently? No, I said quietly. And I don't want to be. There was a pause. Then, he requested you be informed. He may be calling you later today. Fine, I said. Thank you for the courtesy. I hung up. Then I sat down at the table, the apple still unpeeled, my hands suddenly steady. Fraud. Wire theft. I shouldn't have been surprised. I'd seen the signs, his vague explanations, the manic ideas, the fast-talking charm that never held for long. But hearing it confirmed by law was something else entirely. I wasn't sad. I wasn't shocked. I was still. Around noon, the call came. Blocked number. I answered and said nothing. Ma? His voice was different, less rehearsed, a little hollow. They're saying some awful things. It's not what it looks like. Of course it wasn't. I need your help. There it was. Same old melody, different chorus. I need someone on the outside to talk to the lawyer, maybe help with bail. I'm not co-signing anything, Trevor. A pause. I didn't ask you to. You will. Another pause. Longer this time. I didn't think you'd hang me out to dry like this, he said, bitterness creeping in. I'm your son. You were, I replied, before you became someone else. That's not fair, he snapped. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. I understand more than you think, I said calmly. I understand how far someone will go when they think consequences only happen to other people. Silence. I was just trying to fix things. You broke them, Trevor. You don't get credit for trying to tape the pieces together after stomping on them. His voice dropped. You're all I have. You had me, I said. Over and over. You had me. I heard him breathe, sharp and uneven. Then he said it. Words I'd longed to hear 100 times in 100 ways. I'm sorry. But it wasn't the kind of sorry that heals. It was the kind people say when they've run out of angles. I didn't respond. He waited. Ma? He said again. Softer now. Please, don't leave me alone in this. I'm not leaving you, I said. You've been walking away from me for years. The line stayed quiet for several seconds. Then he whispered, I'll call again. I didn't say whether I'd answer. I just hung up the phone and let the silence fill the house. The first letter arrived 3 days later. Cream-colored envelope, my name scrawled in his hurried script. No return address, but I knew the origin. The handwriting was unmistakable. Uneven, slightly slanted, always rushed, like he never learned to slow down even for paper. I didn't open it right away. I set it on the kitchen table, made myself tea, and washed the breakfast dishes that didn't need washing. I watched the rain through the window. Only when the house was still and quiet did I sit down, slide a knife under the flap, and unfold his words. It began how it always did. Ma, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. He was right. He wrote 3 pages, handwritten, not typed. I read every word, slowly, like each line might change the story I'd already lived. He wrote about his cell, the smell, the noise, the slow hours. He wrote about how quickly his friends had vanished once the investigation began, about how none of the people he tried to impress ever came to visit. He wrote about being scared. He said it 3 times. I'm scared, Ma. He mentioned the charges: fraud, falsifying documents, financial coercion. He said there were misunderstandings, but less insistently this time. Like even he didn't believe it anymore. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just kept thinking I could turn it all around. I made stupid choices. I lied. I pushed people away. I used you. There it was. The sentence I'd waited a lifetime to hear, long after it had lost the ability to soothe. I used you. He said he regretted everything. The money, the manipulation, the years he'd taken for granted. You were always there. I thought you always would be. I sat with the letter in my lap for a long time, not crying, not moved, just watching the ink fade slightly where the paper had gotten damp from my fingers. This wasn't forgiveness. This was desperation. A man with nowhere left to go finally turning around to look at the only person who'd never turned their back. Until now. Later that evening, Clara came by with a fresh loaf of sourdough and a scarf she'd knit in soft plum-colored yarn. "Thought you could use something warm," she said. I showed her the letter. She read it silently, her face unreadable. Then she folded it carefully and set it aside. "Do you believe it?" she asked. "I believe he's sorry," I said. "But not for what he did, for where he ended up." She nodded. "Are you going to write him back?" "Yes." "Why?" she asked gently. "Because I want him to hear me. Finally. I want the truth on paper. No more soft landings. No more silence." She didn't argue, just sat beside me, placed her hand over mine, and said, "Then write him what you need to say." That night I pulled out the same notepad I used for grocery lists, and I began. "Dear Trevor, I received your letter. Yes, I read it. Yes, I believe that you're scared. And yes, I believe that some part of you, maybe a very small one, regrets what you've done. But I also believe this. You're not sorry for what you took from me. Not the money, not the Buick, not the savings I drained, or the checks I signed, or the nights I sat at the kitchen table trying to convince myself that if I gave just a little more, you'd finally be okay. You're sorry because now you have no one left to turn to. But Trevor, I was never a rescue plan. I was your mother. And you treated me like a backup system you could reboot every time your world crashed. I know what you think. That family is supposed to be unconditional. That a mother should give, forgive, wait, and hope. I did all of that. And where did it leave me? Alone in my kitchen with a stack of receipts, a shattered car, a closed bank account, and the hollow memory of being your last option. Never your first thought. You say you used me. You're right. But it didn't start last year, or when you wrecked the car, or when you tried to access my account. It started the first time I bailed you out and you didn't look me in the eye. It started the day you stopped calling unless you needed something. It started when you taught your own children to see me as available, not as valuable. I used to sit and wait for you on holidays, cooking meals that got cold on the table. I used to make excuses to Clara and Luke for your absence, telling them you were busy, that you cared, that you'd come around. You never did. I thought, for years, that if I kept giving, kept loving, kept softening every edge of myself for your comfort, you would come back to me. But you didn't. You just came back for more. And the saddest part, Trevor, is that I let you. I held the door open. Again and again. I don't regret loving you. I regret making that love so easy to take and so hard to earn. You say in your letter that I'm all you have left. That may be true. But Trevor, you are no longer all I have. I have peace now. I have mornings where the phone doesn't ring with guilt. I have quiet afternoons where I can bake a pie and not worry if someone will come by and take half without asking. I have Clara, who asks how I feel before she asks for anything. I have Luke, who tells the truth even when it hurts. I have neighbors who wave without needing favors. I have a bank account that no longer leaks. And I have a spine, stronger now than ever, built from every moment I should have said no, and finally did. You will serve your time. You will learn whatever lessons are meant for you in those walls. And when you're done, if you come back expecting things to return to what they were, you will be disappointed. Because what we had wasn't love. It was imbalance. It was obligation. It was silence filling the spaces where honesty should have lived. You ask for mercy. Here it is. I won't hate you. I won't shame you. But I won't carry you anymore. Your mother, Mary. I folded the letter carefully, sealed the envelope, and wrote his name on the front in steady, deliberate script. Not Trevor, my son. Just Trevor Jinson. A name among many. A man with a story, but no longer mine to rescue. They let me see him through glass. I didn't expect the phone, the bolted stool, the pale walls that looked like they hadn't held warmth in decades. I didn't expect the way he looked. Smaller somehow, like a child wearing a grown man's regret. I didn't expect the part of me that still, even now, wanted to reach through the glass and fix his collar. But I didn't move. He picked up the phone first. I took my time before lifting mine. "Ma," he said. I just looked at him. "They said you agreed to the visit. I didn't think you would. I needed to say something, and I wanted you to hear it with your own ears." He waited, not eager, not impatient, just there. Like a man who finally knew he was no longer owed anything. I took a breath. "I was a good mother," I said. He blinked. "I know you were." "No," I said, my voice steady. "I don't think you do. I don't think you ever stopped to really see what that meant." He looked down. "I gave you a life," I continued. "One you didn't earn, but one I tried to make soft, because the world would be hard. I protected you, even when you didn't deserve it, especially when you didn't deserve it. And what did you give me back?" He didn't answer. "You gave me absence, excuses. You gave me lies wrapped in charm, and you gave me just enough crumbs to keep me hoping you'd change." He closed his eyes. "You took my money, my trust, my name when it suited you. You stood in rooms and told people I was your rock while you chipped at me piece by piece. Still nothing. But this part matters, Trevor. This is the part you need to remember when you walk out of here one day and try to rewrite this story." I leaned closer to the glass. "I don't hate you." His head jerked slightly, eyes rising. "I don't. I'm not here for vengeance or guilt or some dramatic ending. I'm here because I wanted you to see the cost." "The cost?" he whispered. "Yes," I said. "Of thinking I'd never walk away. Of believing love means immunity. Of treating kindness like currency you could cash any time." He said my name then, not Ma, just Mary. Like he had to remember who I was without the title he'd always taken for granted. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "But You don't get to ask for it," I interrupted. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." He nodded slowly. "You wanted mercy," I said. "And this is it. Me standing here telling you the truth, not yelling. Not weeping, just finally done pretending." He wiped his cheek. I pretended not to see. "You'll serve your time, and then you'll have to decide what kind of man you want to be without a mother bending the rules to keep you afloat." He looked down again. "I hope you choose better," I said. We sat there, quiet, the hum of the building louder than our breathing. Finally, I said, I'll go now. He didn't ask me to stay. Didn't say, I love you. Didn't ask, will you come back? And that, strangely, was the first honest thing between us in years. I stood, placed the phone back on its cradle. He lifted his hand, slow, like it weighed more than it should. I didn't mirror it. I walked away, out through the doors, into the afternoon light, the air cool and sharp against my skin. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't walking away from something. I was walking toward something else. It's been 7 months since that visit. He wrote, twice. I didn't reply. The letters are tucked in a drawer, unopened. Not out of anger, I just don't need them. I've heard everything I needed to hear. From him, from myself. Some days I wake up before the sun and just sit by the window, listening to the quiet. It's a beautiful sound when it's not filled with waiting. I used to fill silence with worry, wondering where Trevor was, what he might need, what mess I'd soon be asked to clean. Now, the silence is mine. I bake more often. Small things. Blueberry muffins. Lemon cake. Food no one expects from me. Food I make just because I want to. I planted lavender in the backyard, and for once, it's growing wild instead of drying out because I forgot to water it while fixing someone else's fire. Lorraine comes by on Tuesdays. We sit on the porch with our tea and gossip like girls half our age. She laughs loud. I laugh softer. But it's real now. Not the laugh I used to offer as a shield. Clara visits every weekend. Luke sometimes brings his girlfriend, the quiet one with kind eyes. They help me with the things I no longer pretend I can lift. Not because I owe them anything, but because they want to. And when they leave, they hug me like they mean it. My name is still Mary. My house still creaks. My knees still ache when it rains. But something else has changed. Something no one can see unless they've carried the same weight and finally set it down. I'm not ashamed anymore. Not of the years I gave. Not of the lines on my face. Not even of Trevor. Because shame only lives in silence. And I don't live there anymore. I live in the present, with my windows open, with my name on every account and my boundaries built not from anger, but from knowing my worth. Sometimes I think about the version of me from 10 years ago, the woman who kept every receipt, every voicemail, every hope folded neatly in the glove box of a car she barely drove. I want to hold her hand. I want to tell her it's not too late. To all the women reading this, the mothers, the grandmothers, the givers, the ones who keep bending, let me say this to you now. You are not a doormat. You are not a bank. You are not a safety net for someone else's recklessness. You are a whole person. And the moment you start living like one, the world shifts. Even if no one claps for you, clap for yourself. Because I did. I finally did. So if this story found you, if you saw yourself in its pages, share it. Leave a comment. Tell me what part was yours. Not for me, for you. Because your story matters too, and it's never too late to write the ending you deserve.